Have you ever spoken a truth so clear, so cutting that the room went quiet, not in awe but in discomfort? Have you ever watched eyes glaze over, bodies shift away, faces tighten? Not because you were cruel, but because you said what no one else dared to see? This is the first punishment for clarity, not violence, not argument, but silence, a strange kind of death. The truth, when first spoken, is not debated, it is dismissed. Not because it lacks power, but because it holds too much. The truth does not fail to land because it is unconvincing. It fails because it is unbearable. From the very beginning, the one who speaks truth is made an outsider, not because he seeks exile, but because the crowd cannot remain comfortable near him. His presence alone is disruptive. His words, even when calmly offered, dissolve illusions that others have built their lives upon. And people do not thank you for revealing the scaffolding of their delusions. They turn from you, sometimes gently, sometimes violently, but always with a quiet refusal. Not because you are wrong, but because you are too right, too early, too unwilling to participate in the shared fantasy that makes society tolerable. The crowd does not want to awaken, it wants to survive. And survival for most demands a certain degree of illusion. The illusion that things are fair, that people are good, that life has inherent meaning, that suffering will be rewarded. You, the thinker, threaten this architecture not by force but by clarity. You shatter the comforting fog, and in doing so, you reveal the void beneath it. This is not welcomed. It is not appreciated. It is feared. You might have believed, as I once did, that truth would connect you to others, that honesty spoken with care would build bridges, that clear vision would draw others nearer. But the opposite is true. The more you see, the less you are seen. The more you speak with sincerity, the more others guard themselves against you. They do not want to be free, they want to be reassured. And you offer them no such thing. This is why your loneliness deepened the moment your thoughts sharpened. This is why you began to lose people not when you changed, but when you stopped pretending. They did not leave because you failed them. They left because you stopped helping them lie to themselves, you stopped performing. And in a world that worships illusion, this is unforgivable. But ask yourself this: what kind of connection demands your blindness? What kind of society rejects the one who sees clearly? The answer is bitter, and it is liberating. You are not alone because you are broken. You are alone because you are awake. And that solitude, though cold, is holy. If you have ever been met with silence for speaking the truth, if you've ever felt the sting of disappearing in plain sight, then say it now. Comment, "They didn't want to hear it." Because the truth deserves to be spoken even in exile. Do not be deceived. The rejection you feel is not personal. It is metaphysical. It is not your tone, your timing, or your delivery that repels others. It is your clarity. You awaken something in them they have spent their entire lives trying to silence. You disturb the sleep they mistake for peace. This is why truth isolates, because truth is not a bomb. It is a blade, and those who are governed by the will instinctively turn from what would sever them from illusion. The will, as I have shown, is the blind, irrational force at the heart of existence. It does not seek truth. It seeks only to affirm itself, to continue, to strive, to consume, to repeat. It is this will that animates all beings, not toward understanding but toward craving. To expose the will is not to educate, it is to threaten. For most people, their happiness is not found in reality but in their fantasies about it. When you offer truth, you do not offer safety, you offer fire. And fire, no matter how illuminating, burns. This is why those who tell the truth are not only ignored, they are hated. Not openly, not always with violence, but with subtle exclusion, with passive dismissal, with the quiet coldness of a world that does not want to be disturbed. Your existence, if you are truly awake, is itself a disturbance. You are not just the one who sees, you are the one who sees through their justifications, through their distractions, through the facades they call identity. The will cannot survive in this light, and so it retreats. You may think you can help others see, that if you explain gently, they will thank you, that if you present your insights with care, they will awaken beside you. But this is naive. You are not speaking to minds. You are speaking through walls. And these walls were not built casually. They were built to survive. The will has no interest in your insights. It wants comfort. It wants repetition. It wants the narcotic of illusion. And it will punish anything that threatens its dream. Even now you may feel the ache of that punishment, the empty spaces where friends used to be, the conversations that now feel strained, awkward, shallow, the distance growing between you and the world you once belonged to. But hear me. This is not failure. This is confirmation. You are not being cast out for your errors. You are being cast out for your lucidity. And that, though painful, is a mark of integrity. Ask yourself, have you truly lost anything by speaking truth except the approval of those who feared it? What you feel now is not the loss of connection. It is the loss of illusion. And that pain is sacred. It is the sign that you have chosen clarity over comfort, honesty over acceptance, reality over ritual. You have chosen to wake up even as the world begs you to keep dreaming. If you sense this, if you've seen through something you cannot unsee, then you already know. The will rejects what wakes it up. So do not shrink. Do not apologize for what you've seen. You were not made to decorate the dream. You were made to pierce it. You believed perhaps that clarity would be enough. That truth shining with its own quiet authority would be welcomed, or at the very least heard. But what you learned was something darker, more sobering. That truth, when brought too close, does not merely unsettle people, it provokes them. It does not correct error. It exposes ego. And ego, when cornered, does not surrender. It strikes. You watched it happen, not in grand debates or dramatic confrontations, but in subtle ways. A withdrawal, a tone shift, a dismissal disguised as concern. You offered an insight, and they laughed. You raised a question, and they grew tense. You pointed gently toward the illusion, and they called you arrogant, cold, difficult. But listen closely. You did not provoke this. You revealed it. The reason they turn on you is simple. You introduce the unbearable, not because your ideas are violent, but because they are pure. The truth you offer is unflinching. It does not flatter. It does not soften. And that makes you dangerous, not to the body, but to the identity. Most people do not live as beings. They live as beliefs. Their personality is a tapestry of opinions, fears, hopes, and borrowed convictions. And when you question one thread, the whole fabric begins to fray. This is what they fear. You are not just another voice. You are a mirror that reflects not only what is, but what is false. And few can look into that without blinking, turning, or breaking the glass. You've seen it, haven't you? The way someone's warmth fades the moment your words go beneath the surface. The way a conversation dies when you speak with sincerity. Not because you are harsh, but because you are clear. They say you overthink, that you take things too seriously, that you dwell on the negative. But these are not observations. They are defenses. They are the mind's attempt to seal itself from infection. And to them, you are the virus, the one who questions the unquestioned, who walks into a room and makes everything feel slightly less certain. Not because you demand it, but because you carry it. Truth is not neutral. It divides, it illuminates, but it also blinds. It awakens, but it also destabilizes. And in a world built on comfortable lies, the one who tells the truth will always be seen as a threat. Not because he is wrong, but because he refuses to say what everyone else agrees to pretend. So understand this. The backlash is not proof of your failure. It is the price of vision. You are not difficult. You are accurate. And accuracy in a world allergic to correction is the most offensive thing you can offer. If you've ever been turned on, not for cruelty, but for clarity, then say it. Comment, I spoke clearly and that was enough. They turned on you, not because you wounded them, but because you refused to lie with them. You don't need to speak to offend them. You only need to exist. Your silence alone disturbs the room, not because it is rude, but because it is reflective. Your presence does not demand attention, but it reveals something unbearable. The quiet contrast between illusion and insight. Most people do not fear being wrong. They fear being seen. And when they stand beside someone who sees clearly, they feel exposed, not by your judgment, but by your clarity. You are the mirror they cannot forgive. A mirror, when it is true, does not flatter. It does not round the edges, soften the lines, or light the face from its favorite angle. It simply shows. And this is your crime. You show without distortion. You reflect reality without cosmetic edits. And what they see in your presence is not your arrogance, not your superiority, but their own artificiality. The games they play, the words they say, the truths they avoid, these become visible when you do nothing more than remain still. That stillness is violence to them, because most people survive not by truth but by performance. Their days are a theater, their smiles a costume, their values a script they recite to remain acceptable. They are not living, they are acting. And you, by refusing to join the play, ruin the illusion for everyone. You don't belong, not because you are flawed, but because you do not pretend. They try to include you, but your silence unnerves them. They try to exclude you, but your absence lingers. They don't know how to classify you because you're not playing their game. You don't compete for validation. You don't decorate your speech with half-truths. You don't adopt the tribal slogans that signal loyalty over lucidity. And this makes you dangerous because it makes you real. The truth, when embodied in a human being, is not lovable. It is unbearable, because it shows what others must hide to go on living as they do. You are the reminder that something is off, that the world is not quite right, that happiness might be delusion and virtue might be vanity. You don't say these things. You are these things. And for that, they push you away. Do not take it personally. It is not about you. It is about what you reflect. You did not break them. You showed them their fracture, and the world will always punish the mirror more than the hammer that actually caused the crack. If you've ever walked into a room and felt like your very presence made people uneasy, if you've sensed a distance that words could not close, then you already know. You are the mirror they cannot forgive. Comment, I became the mirror and they turned away. You did not fail them. You just stopped lying to them. You believe you are alone, that your thoughts have made you strange, that your clarity has cursed you with exile. But I tell you this, you are not alone. You are not the first. You are walking a path carved by those who saw too soon, who spoke too honestly, who refused to call shadows light simply to be loved. This world has never welcomed its truth-tellers. It has only tolerated them after their deaths, once their insights no longer threaten the collective sleep. Socrates did not die of poison, he died of perception. His crime was not corruption, but clarity. He wandered the streets of Athens asking questions no one wanted to answer. He held up a mirror to the proud, the pious, the powerful, and exposed their ignorance without raising his voice. They could not bear him because he dismantled their illusions without lifting a sword. And so, to preserve the lie, they ended the man. The unexamined life was not just unworthy, it was protected at all costs. Galileo did not suffer because he made a mistake. He suffered because he made them uncomfortable. He stared through a telescope and saw what the church refused to see. That Earth was not the center. That man was not the axis of creation. That certainty was a fragile myth. They called it heresy, not because it lacked evidence, but because it lacked utility. The truth did not serve power, so they silenced it, and him. Even Pascal, who stared into the abyss of human contradiction, was too much, too subtle, too honest. He understood that people need distraction more than salvation, that they would rather be entertained than awakened. And Nietzsche, mad, they said. But it was not madness, it was magnitude. He saw through so many layers that the surface of life could no longer hold him. And I too have felt the cold wind of distance, not because I sought it, but because I spoke. I said plainly that life is suffering, that desire is slavery, that love is the mask of the species' reproduction drive. I told them that their pleasures were thin veils stretched over a chasm of striving, and for that I was mocked, ignored, misunderstood, but not refuted. Never refuted. Because the truth, though hated, is always eventually recognized by the few. You who feel the sting of separation are not lost. You are in ancient company. You are not broken. You are walking a sacred path. The path of Socrates, Galileo, Hypatia, Nietzsche, Turing, those whose truths were too sharp for their time. Do not romanticize this. Do not imagine that society will thank you. It won't, not now, maybe not ever. But understand the meaning. You were cast out not for weakness but for vision. You do not belong among the many, you belong among the few. And that loneliness you feel, it is not a curse, it is a mark. It says you have seen what they fear, and you did not look away. Comment: I am not alone, I walk with the truth-tellers. Because that is the lineage you belong to. They told you intelligence was a blessing, that to understand more was to rise above, that to see clearly was a mark of elevation, of strength, of light. But they lied, not maliciously perhaps, but ignorantly. Intelligence is not the crown they promised you. It is the chain you feel wrapped around your spirit. The more you understand, the harder it becomes to participate in the illusions that make life tolerable for others. What they call small talk, you call unbearable. What they call love, you see as the machinery of reproduction. What they celebrate as meaning, you recognize as narrative, fragile, comforting, but false. You do not choose to be distant. The distance arises the moment your eyes adjust to the truth, the moment you no longer believe that happiness is a right, that success will satisfy, that the world is just, or that people are what they pretend to be. And once you see that, once you see it fully, you can't go back. You can't rejoin the game. You can smile, you can nod, you can play along. But the inside of you has changed. It no longer feeds on what others feed on. It no longer kneels before the idols of pleasure, status, or approval. And this makes you incomprehensible to them. You are not arrogant, you are not aloof. You are simply no longer hypnotized. And that frightens them, because they sense something in you that they do not have. Not certainty, not superiority, but freedom. The freedom that comes from no longer needing what they need. You do not believe in the fantasy of endless progress. You do not worship the god of goals. You do not chase the mirage of fulfillment through acquisition. And this refusal makes you a threat. Not because you say anything, but because you remind them, without a word, that their dream might be a prison. This is what I meant when I wrote that a high degree of intellect tends to make a man unsocial. It is not because he dislikes people. It is because their pleasures pain him. Their noise offends his silence. Their dramas bore his vision. He does not flee from them out of pride. He withdraws because he has seen behind the curtain. And what is there cannot be spoken in the market square. You are not wrong to feel the way you do. You are not broken for walking alone. You are not cynical for questioning everything. These are not defects. These are consequences. Consequences of seeing too much too early and having no one to explain it to but yourself. If your intelligence has cost you connection, if it has made you silent, distant, or strange, then say it. Comment: I see too much. That is my exile. You do not need to be fixed. You need to be understood, and if the world cannot do that, then let this be the place where your silence finds echo. You may still wonder if truth contains within it the seed of liberation. Why is it so unwelcome? Why does the world not crave it as you do? Why do those around you flinch from even the gentlest forms of insight? The answer is brutal in its simplicity. Because truth does not comfort, and people above all want to be comforted. They do not want to be awakened. They want to be held in the arms of pleasant illusions. The lies they accept are not mistakes, they are medication. And you, by offering reality, threaten their only relief. The human mind is not built to prioritize truth. It is built to reduce pain. Comfort is not a luxury. It is a survival mechanism. Most live in a fragile balance held together by beliefs they never examine. That they are good, that life is fair, that tomorrow will reward today's struggle. And these beliefs are not chosen for their truthfulness. They are chosen for their usefulness. They keep the structure standing. And when you introduce truth, pure, unsoftened truth, you do not add to their strength. You remove their supports. They call it negativity. They call it cynicism. But what they truly mean is, you are making me feel what I cannot survive. This is why comfort wins. Not because it is true, but because it is easy. The mind, like water, follows the path of least resistance. It avoids discomfort, complexity, contradiction. This is not a moral failure. It is a feature of the species. And that is why the bearer of truth walks alone. Not because he wants to, but because the space he creates by speaking honestly becomes intolerable for others to remain in. Schopenhauer understood this. He saw that the will to live does not seek understanding. It seeks affirmation. It builds systems of meaning not because they reflect reality, but because they protect the organism from despair. The institutions of society, religion, politics, love are scaffolds. They hold the trembling creature upright, and truth, like a wind, topples them if spoken too loudly. That is why it must be whispered. That is why it is punished. That is why the world does not want it until it is safe. Do not misunderstand me. The comfort others choose is not always foolish. It is in many cases necessary. Not everyone can stare into the abyss and return intact. Not everyone can live without the fictions that give their days momentum. But you who see, can no longer participate in those fictions. And so you grieve. You grieve not just what you've lost, but what you can no longer believe. You grieve the comfort that will never again be yours. But there is a dignity in that loss. Because while comfort may win the crowd, truth builds the soul. It purifies. It burns away false hope and in its place leaves clarity. Cold, sharp, unyielding clarity, and with it comes a different kind of peace. Not the peace of not knowing, but the peace of no longer needing to pretend. If you've ever felt that your honesty made you the villain, that your refusal to lie was received as cruelty, then say it now. Comment, I chose truth over comfort. Because in this world that choice is not common, and it is never without cost. Do not ask why you are alone. Ask instead, how could it be otherwise? For to live by truth is to stand apart from those who live by necessity. They believe not because they have seen, but because they must believe in order to go on. And when you withdraw, it is not an act of arrogance. It is an act of survival, not from the world, but from the pressure to lie with it. The exile of the deep thinker is not chosen. It is earned, and it is deserved not as punishment, but as a consequence of honesty. There is a philosophy in that exile, a dark dignity. You are not among them, not because you think too much, but because you have seen too far. The stage they perform on, you have walked behind. You have touched the ropes, the curtains, the hollow wooden props. You have seen that the stories they recite with such conviction are written by fear, rehearsed by the will to live, and performed for each other so that no one has to look down into the void. You look down. And so you cannot return to the script. Schopenhauer wrote that the man who thinks deeply feels himself as a stranger in the world. It is not that the world rejects him. It simply has no place for what he has become. The crowd speaks in currencies of distraction, status, pleasure, success, and to them your silence is not wisdom. It is insult. Your refusal to join in their rituals is seen not as grief, but as contempt. They do not see that you have simply lost the ability to pretend. You did not abandon them. You outgrew the lie they still call reality. Nietzsche, too, understood this. He called it the path of the lonely mountain, not because it elevates you, but because it separates. You are no better. You are no holier. You are simply elsewhere. The conversations that once gave you warmth now feel like noise. The company that once soothed now feels crowded. The laughter around you feels strained, forced, manufactured. You are not cold. You are sober. And in this world, sobriety is mistaken for sadness. So let it be. You must stop waiting for the world to understand you. It will not. Not because you are broken, but because you have refused to join the breakage. Your exile is not a flaw. It is a shelter. In solitude, you are no longer required to fake your ignorance. You are no longer forced to smother your insight with social lubrication. You are permitted finally to say nothing, and let that silence be a form of truth. But even in exile, you are not entirely alone. Others have walked this path. Pascal, Nietzsche, Spinoza, Schopenhauer. Their books, their ideas, their suffering, all were born from this same estrangement. The philosophy of exile is not bitterness. It is clarity, and clarity is always punished before it is praised. So if you have stepped away, not out of pride, but out of fatigue, if you have chosen silence not as a weapon, but as a form of honesty, then you know this feeling. Comment: exile is where my truth could breathe, because sometimes the only honest place to live is far from the noise. Now that you know what it costs, the question changes. It is no longer, why do they not understand me? It becomes, how can I carry this clarity and still go on living among them? For truth, if carried carelessly, will not only isolate you, it will destroy you. It will embitter you. It will turn your vision into venom. But that too is a form of blindness. To see clearly is not to hate. It is to see without illusion. And if you wish to endure, you must learn to bear the weight of what you know without letting it poison your heart. First, you must protect your insight. Do not cast it before those who have not asked for it. Do not explain yourself to the uninterested. Do not argue with the comfortable. These are traps. Not for them, but for you. The world does not reward truth. It punishes exposure. You are not here to convince the crowd. You are here to survive your vision. And to do that, you must choose silence as your shield, not your cage. Speak only where you are heard. Share only where there is hunger. Most will not want what you carry. They will not understand what it took from you. They will mock the shape of it without ever touching the depth. Let them. There is no victory in being right to deaf ears. There is only exhaustion. And exhaustion leads to bitterness. And bitterness is what turns clarity into cruelty. Do not become cruel, and the thinker must become as disciplined as the warrior. Not with weapons, but with silence, timing, discretion. You must learn to observe without needing to correct. To know without needing to speak. Not out of cowardice, but out of wisdom. Just as a man with gold does not display it in the street, so too must you guard your understanding from those who would trample it, not out of malice, but because they do not know what it is. And in that guarding, you find peace. Find beauty in small moments, in music, in old books, in the quiet mind that no longer races to be heard. The world is loud, let it be. Your silence is not weakness, it is refinement. Your solitude is not absence, it is your monastery. And in this life, the thinker must become his own sanctuary. For the crowd will not build one for you. You will also need companions, not many, but true ones. Those who have suffered the same exile, who do not ask you to soften, who do not flinch when your words cut through fog. Seek them in books, in philosophy, sometimes rarely in another soul. You do not need 1,000 voices around you. You need one echo that says, yes, I see it too. If you've learned to carry truth like a hidden flame, shielded but burning, then say so. Comment: I protect my truth like a fire in the wind. Because that is what it is. And only those who've nearly lost it understand how sacred it is to keep. They told you that something was wrong with you, that you were too serious, too cold, too distant, too intense. They tried to shape you into something softer, more compliant, easier to explain. They told you to lighten up, to be more optimistic, to stop asking questions no one else wanted to answer. But what they called too much was never too much. It was simply too soon. You are not broken. You are just early. You saw things before others were ready. You saw the emptiness behind their pleasures. You saw the futility in their striving. You saw the falsehood in their smiles, the desperation in their ambitions, the hollowness in their rewards. And seeing these things did not make you bitter. It made you alone. That is not a flaw. That is a stage. Every thinker, every seeker, every mind that cuts through illusion must pass through this corridor of exile, not to be punished, but to be prepared. You are ahead of your time, and that is not glorious, it is agonizing. To walk through a forest alone and call out truths no one yet believes is not noble, it is lonely. But do not mistake that loneliness for error. You are not lost. You are simply not where most people are. And that difference, though unbearable at times, is also sacred. It means you are not here to follow. You are here to illuminate. The world will not reward you for this, not quickly. They will not recognize the cost of what you carry. They will call it arrogance. They will call it sadness. They will call it detachment. But these are the names they give to clarity when they cannot understand it. And you must forgive them. They are not evil. They are early in their own way, early in their resistance, early in their fear. And you are just early in your freedom. So what do you do now? You continue. You refine. You walk not with bitterness, but with precision. You choose your companions wisely. You build not a castle of pride, but a shelter of solitude. You speak when it matters, and you remain silent when it doesn't. You guard your vision. You polish it. You do not throw it at the feet of the indifferent. You carry it like a blade that does not need to be drawn to have power. This world is slow to welcome those who see clearly. It always has been. Socrates was executed. Galileo silenced. Nietzsche dismissed. Schopenhauer laughed at. But the truth is patient, and so must you be. You are not wrong for walking alone. You are not wrong for feeling distant. You are not wrong for refusing the game. You are simply one step ahead of a world that still needs to pretend. So walk quietly, but do not stop. Comment, I'm not broken, I'm just early. Because that is the truth no one gave you. And now that you see it, carry it well. If this script reflected something you've always known but could never say, share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe if you walk the same path, and speak only to those who recognize the silence behind your eyes. And we are few, but we are real, and that is enough.